Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
I'd like to thank Chaitanya Prabhu for giving me the opportunity to speak about Krishna and to engage me in some devotional service. So, today we'll be doing chapter 9, verse number 29. Yeah, it's on the screen now. So, maybe you can say the verse in response. Samoham sarvabhuteshu
Samoham sarvabhuteshu
Name dveshyosti na priya
Name dveshyosti na priya
Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya
Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya
Mayite teshu chapyaham
Mayite teshu chapyaham
Samoham sarvabhuteshu
Samoham sarvabhuteshu
Name dveshyoti na priya
Name dveshyosti na priya
Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya
Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya
Mayite teshu chapyatam
Mayite teshu chapyaham
Samoham sarvabhuteshu
Samoham sarvabhuteshu
Name dveshyosti na priya
Name dveshyosti na priya
Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya
Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya
Mayite teshu chapyaham
Mayite teshu chapyaham
Samaha,
Samaha,
equally disposed.
equally disposed.
Aham,
Aham,
I,
I,
sarvabhuteshu,
sarvabhuteshu,
to all living entities.
to all living entities.
Na,
Na,
no one,
no one,
me,
me,
to me. Dveshya,
Dveshya,
hateful. Asti,
Asti,
is.
is.
Na,
No,
no.
no,
Priya,
Priya,
dear.
dear.
Yeah, those who.
Those who
Bhajanti,
Bhajanti,
render devotion, transcendental service.
transcendent
To,
to
but,
Ma,
unto me,
unto me,
bhaktya,
Bhaktya,
in devotion,
in devotion,
my,
my,
are in me,
and
te,
te,
such persons,
such persons,
deshu,
Deshu,
in them,
in
cha,
Cha,
also,
also,
api,
Api,
certainly,
certainly,
aham,
Aham,
I.
I,
Translation, I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I'm equal to all, but whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I'm also a friend to him. So, should we say it in response? I envy no one,
I envy no one,
nor am I partial
nor am I partial
to anyone.
to anyone,
I'm equal
and equal
to all,
to all.
but whoever renders service unto me
But whoever renders service unto me
in devotion
in devotion
is a friend,
is a friend,
is in me,
is in me,
and I'm also
and I am
a
also
friend to him.
a friend to him.
Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
One may question here that if Krishna is equal to everyone, and no one is his special friend, then why does he take a special interest in the devotees who are always engaged in his transcendental service? But this is not discrimination, it is natural. Any man in this material world may be very charitably disposed, yet he has a special interest in his own children. The Lord claims that every living entity, in whatever form, is his son. And so he provides everyone with a generous supply of the necessities of life. He's just like a cloud which pours rain all over, regardless of whether it falls on rock or land or water. But for his devotees, he gives specific attention. Such devotees are mentioned here. They are always in Krishna consciousness, and therefore they are always transcendently situated in Krishna. The very phrase Krishna consciousness suggests that those who are in such consciousness are living transcendentalists, situated in him. The Lord says here distinctly, Maite, they are in me. Naturally, as a result, the Lord is also in them. This is reciprocal. This also explains the words Ye yatamam prapadyantetams tataiva Bhajami aham. Whoever surrenders unto me, proportionately I take care of him. This transcendental reciprocation exists because both the Lord and the devotee are conscious. When a diamond is set in a golden ring, it looks very nice. The gold is glorified, and at the same time, the diamond is glorified. The Lord and the living entity eternally glitter, and when a living entity becomes inclined to the service of the Supreme Lord, he looks like gold. The Lord is a diamond, and so this combination is very nice. Living entities in a pure state are called devotees. The Supreme Lord becomes the devotee of his devotees. If a reciprocal relationship is not present between the devotee and the Lord, then there is no personalist philosophy. In the impersonal philosophy, there is no reciprocation between the Supreme and the living entity, but in the personalist philosophy, there is. The example is often given that the Lord is like a desired tree, and whatever one wants from this desired tree, the Lord supplies. But here the explanation is more complete. The Lord is here stated to be partial to the devotees. This is the manifestation of the Lord's special mercy to the devotees. The Lord's reciprocation should not be considered to be under the law of karma. It belongs to the transcendental situation in which the Lord and his devotees function. Devotional service to the Lord is not an activity of this material world. It is part of the spiritual world, where eternity, bliss, and knowledge predominate. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutalishmati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Vishesha Shinavani Vishalishatayane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Krishna says, I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I'm equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me is a devotion. In devotion is a friend, is in me, and I'm also a friend to him. So this verse might seem a little bit contradictory to some. Even in the purport, the same question is asked and is explained, like by Srila Prabhupada. So it says, one would question here that if Krishna is equal to everyone, and no one is his special friend, then why does he take a special interest in the devotees who are always engaged in his transcendental service? So Krishna says he's impartial, but yet he favors his devotees over others. So is this really impartial? Right? Impartial means he's equal to all. So how can he be equal to all if he sides with his devotees? And we have many examples of this, right? Can anyone tell me an example where Krishna favors his devotee? So, Arjuna, yes. Prahlad Maharaj. So let's take the example of Prahlad Maharaj. So Prahlad Maharaj, he was the son of a very powerful atheistic king, right? From his birth, he was in the hands of people who believed that the body is the self. They were really materialistic people. So from the nurses who picked him up, to the court attendants, his mother, the other children around him, they all believed in that philosophy. They were like demoniac nature, like we are the body. So basically they were all against the idea that, they were all against God, the idea of God. So there were no talks of Krishna or any spiritual knowledge whatsoever. They were basically demons. So for a boy who takes birth, it's not so different from our civilization. Basically, it's really hard to hear about Krishna. Say, for example, a person is taking birth somewhere. What are the chances of him hearing about Krishna? Right? So, for Prahlad Maharaj, it was almost nil, taking birth in that particular place, amongst Hiranyakashipu and all these demons. But however, at the age of 5, Prahlad Maharaj started to preach to his friends and people around him. He told them there is an urgent need to take up Krishna consciousness. So everyone knows what happens after this, yeah? They tried to kill him. His old father became his enemy. But Prahlad was a pure devotee of the Lord. So he would tell his friends, my dear friends, we need to become Krishna conscious. And what would the other boys say?
Prahlad, we're too young, we're 5 years old, we should be playing. That's for old people.
Exactly. They said, Prahlad, we're only 5 years old. We can do this Krishna conscious thing when we grow older. And this is very interesting because we see this very often, right? Sometimes we are a bit like these little boys, isn't it? So many times I myself have said, like, okay, I will be more serious in my spiritual life. But tomorrow, yeah, I'll start tomorrow. Or maybe from next week. Next week, yeah, I'm going to be really serious. So we keep procrastinating things. We will have time for that, but there are more important things to do right now. I will take my own time and I will progress naturally and I will progress at ease in my spiritual life. You know, I've been chanting 2 rounds since the past 8 years. That's okay, I have time. I will chant more later. So speaking for me at least, I was always thinking, I don't want to live the life of a priest. You know, I've been in contact with devotees, and it took an odd 20 years for me to make like some significant like spiritual steps in my life. Right, so it was exactly like those little boys, 5-year-old boys. You know, hey Prahlad, let us play with our balls right now. This Krishna thing can come later. But Prahlad would say, this is very interesting, he would say, my dear friends, I know you want to play, and I know you're looking for sense gratification, but there's no need to try so hard and to endeavor so much for material pleasures, because these things will come naturally. They will come naturally without endeavor, and they will come according to the body that you have. These arrangements have already been made by nature, and it will come, just like misery. And that's one thing I really like. He says, he gives you an example, he says, how long can you live? How long will you live? 100 years? Right? And in those 100 years, the first 20 years will be spent playing football, right? Climbing trees, jumping in rivers, swimming. Nowadays it's more like PlayStation, Xbox, right? Whatever distractions people have. 20 years, that's gone, right? And then, after that 20 years, the next 40 years, we either meet one girl or we meet one boy, and then we start to have a sex life. So that's the root of attachment, right? He says, after this, you get married, you have a wife, you get a husband, whatsoever, you have children, and then you need to work. You need to work really hard to support your family, because they need a house, they need wealth, you need some recognition, you need prestige, and Prahlad Maharaj says a person must labor for that. He must serve for his family, and he must make sure that they have material happiness. So that's 40 years gone. So how many is left?
60.
40.
60, no.
Oh, sorry, that was the next 20.
You know, 20 years left, right? So these 20 years, what are we? We are already old. We're already feeble and invalid. You know? Or even if a man is not invalid, then what does he do?
Invalid, not invalid. It's a different word. Invalid.
Invalid. Okay, thank you. So, what does he do with his life? Right? He's attracted, he's enamored. Is this right? This right. He's enamored by his grandchildren. And he spends his time doing those things with family attachment. And basically he's got no time to prepare himself spiritually. So at the time of death, he might get the body of an animal, but basically he's got to come back. So there's no time for Krishna. And he tells these boys, so that is why we have to take action now itself, before we start to get attached to all these things. So gradually these news reached Hiranyakashipu. Right? Actually the teachers complained. They went to Hiranyakashipu and they said, we're only teaching mathematics, economics, history and other subjects. We don't know where this Krishna consciousness comes from. Right? It's a long leader, but they tried to kill Prahlad Maharaj after that. And at that particular time, Hiranyakashipu, he already got his powers from Brahma. He already got his boon, so he thought he was invincible. And he was conquering many places in godly planets. So his name itself, like Hiranya. Does anyone know what Hiranya means?
Gold.
Hiranya means soft bed. And Kashipu means gold. So his name itself, soft bed of gold. It's a soft bed of gold. So these were the basic principles of his life. So he asked Prahlad, what is the best thing you learned from your teachers? And Prahlad said, well, I never learned anything good from them. But I do know what the best thing is. And he said, what's the best thing? He says, like he says, the best thing is to leave this dark well of material life and to take shelter of Krishna, the Lord. So at that moment, that answer stood like a wall in between them, because the father was a determined atheist and Prahlad was a firm devotee of Krishna. So from there they tried to kill Prahlad in numerous ways, but Krishna always saved him. Prahlad was thrown in a pot of boiling water. Krishna saved him. Hiranyakashipu tried to freeze him in a snowstorm, but again Krishna saved him. He tried to leave him, to get him torn by the winds of a strong hurricane, but again, what happened? Krishna saved him again. They threw him in a pit of snakes, but the snakes, they didn't do anything, they didn't harm him. They placed Prahlad under the foot of an elephant, but that elephant, he just picked him up with his trunk and put him on his back in a triumphant ride, basically. You see? Like Hiranyakashipu even forced his mother to put poison in his food. And they did that, but that didn't have any effect either. Why is that? Because Krishna was protecting him all the time. So finally Hiranyakashipu got so angry, he threw Prahlad on the floor and he told him, where do you get your superpowers from? And Prahlad told him, well, just the same as you, from God. And Hiranyakashipu said, where is this God? Is he here? He took out his sword, he's like, is he here? Is he there? Prahlad said, he's everywhere. And he said, is he in this pillar? Right, so Nrsimhadev just smashed the pillar, came out, and killed Hiranyakashipu. Like Krishna came in the form of Nrsimhadev, and he killed him. So that's an instance where we see that the Lord came to protect his devotee. So that question is asked again, is the Lord really impartial and equal to everyone? Is he? He sided with Prahlad Maharaj. How can he be equal to Hiranyakashipu if he sided with Prahlad Maharaj? Yeah, impartial means you don't like, like that. Another instance was in Mahabharata. Right? So Duryodhana criticized Bhishma and said, grandfather, you are not fighting this battle with your full strength because the Pandavas are your grandsons and you have a natural affection for them. You are not fighting, else they would have been finished by now. So Bhishma could understand and he immediately promised. He says, I will finish these 5 brothers tomorrow. Are you happy? I have 5 arrows that I kept specifically for them. And Duryodhana, he was in doubt, he was doubtful. And he told Bhishma, Bhishma, can I keep these arrows with me? And I will give them back to you tomorrow morning. So Bhishma said, okay, here you go. But what did Krishna do? Krishna knew about all of this already. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he told Arjuna, Duryodhana told you, he made a promise to you that he would give you any benediction. Right? So now's the time to go and ask him for his benediction. So go then ask him for his 5 arrows. So Krishna and Arjuna went and he did that. Immediately Duryodhana just gave him the arrows. So the next day Bhishma got really angry and he understood it was Krishna's trick. So he attacked, like very ferociously, you know. He attacked and broke Arjuna's chariot and Arjuna fell down. And at that time, Krishna, he made a promise. Krishna said, okay, at the beginning of the battle, he said he would give Duryodhana his army, right? But he wouldn't be with his army, and whichever side picks him up, he would not lift up any weapon in this battle. But what happened because of his devotee, when Arjuna fell down, he broke that promise. Right? He broke his promise. And he picked up the wheel, like it came out from a chariot. He took this wheel and he ran towards Bhishma. And that's another leader, even though Bhishma was firing arrows at him, he still went through. But for his devotee, he did that. So that's another instance where Krishna sides with his devotee and protects his devotee. So in this same war, like of Mahabharata, they had a particular rule that the fighting would stop at sunset. But Arjuna had a son called Abhimanyu, and when Abhimanyu got killed, Arjuna took a vow to kill Jayadratha. That was the name of the person. Because of him, they couldn't go in to help Abhimanyu. So Arjuna said, if I don't kill him by sunset, I will take my life. So he made a vow. And guess who was really happy about this? Duryodhana was really happy. He said, well, that's great. All we need to do is to protect him for one day. And that's it. That's it. Arjuna will have to give up his life. And effectively they did. So the next day, this Jayadratha, he was nowhere to be found. So sunset came and the war stopped. And that's when he came in sight. So the Kauravas were all thrilled. So now Arjuna, he wasn't successful, so he would have to give up his life. You see? But at that time, what happened? It's like the sun came out again. And then Krishna just gave Arjuna directions, and Arjuna just killed him. Right? So this is all Krishna's Leela. So we can see that was the doing of Krishna. And again, Krishna protects his devotee. So if we think about it, it's like, how can Krishna be impartial and equal to everyone after this? Right? But the thing is, Krishna is impartial in the sense that he has made himself available to everyone in the same way. So, just like when the sun shines, or when the rain falls, it doesn't fall just on one man's house, does it? It falls for everybody, right? But suppose I have an umbrella over my head. I'm standing there with an umbrella. Can I really complain that, okay, the sun is shining on Pratik and it's not shining on me? Can I complain that, okay, the rain is falling on Pratik and it's not falling on me? Can I really do that? Can I say the rainfall is partial? He's only choosing Pratik and not me. I can't really say that because I'm holding that umbrella, right? So Krishna conscious means one who is always absorbed in Krishna, and Krishna says, he is in me, and that is reciprocal. Right? In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse number 11, Krishna says, Ye yatamam prapadyante damstataiva bhajami aham. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So that's how Krishna is. As we surrender unto him, he rewards us accordingly. But they are people who are Krishna conscious, they are always thinking about Krishna. Like examples of great devotees like Prahlad Maharaj, like Arjuna, they were totally surrendered and they are always thinking about Krishna. Right? But a person who is not Krishna conscious, He's exactly like the person who's holding that umbrella. And what is this umbrella? This umbrella is like Maya. It's material entanglement. So we are covered. It's like a covering. We are covered by the modes of nature. We have three modes of nature. We have three modes of nature: mode of passion, mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. Right? So unless we transcend these modes of nature, we are still entangled in the material life. So it's very hard to see Krishna in this way. Right? So these persons, they can't see Krishna. Even if Krishna is coming in the form of sunshine, or is coming in the form of rainfall, they have like this covering on top of them. So they can't really connect with Krishna. They can't really connect with Krishna. But that doesn't mean Krishna is not there for them. Because the choice of holding this umbrella here, or dropping the umbrella, it's not Krishna who's making this choice. It's ourselves we are making this choice. Whether we want to be covered, or whether we want to be Krishna. Basically, it's according to our desire. It's according to our desire. And there's a nice purport. I'd like to read that from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, verse number 15.
5:15.
5:15, the purport. Well, I've got some excerpts from this purport, basically. So, it says, the Lord is Vibhu, which means he is always satisfied in himself, undisturbed by sinful or pious activities. He does not create a particular situation for any living entity, but the living entity, bewildered by ignorance, desires to be put into certain conditions of life, and thereby his chain of action and reaction begins. So Krishna, he does not create any particular situation for any living entity. So it's ourselves who are choosing that. You see? So it says the Lord is Vibhu, but the living entity is atomic. Because he is a living soul, he has the capacity to desire by his free will. Such desire is fulfilled by the omnipotent Lord. And so when the living entity is bewildered in his desires, the Lord always allows him to fulfill those desires. But the Lord is never responsible for the actions and reactions of a particular situation which may be desired. The Lord is the constant companion of the living entity as Paramatma, or the soul, and therefore he can understand the desires of the individual soul, as one can smell the flavor of a flower by being near it. Desire is a subtle form of conditioning for the living entity. The Lord fulfills his desire as he deserves. Man proposes and God disposes. So the individual is therefore omnipotent in fulfilling is not therefore omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires. And the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere with the desires of minute independent living entities. So we can see that Krishna, he does not interfere with our desires. Our desires, that's our own form of freedom, that's our own, not freedom, but that's the minute independence that every living entity have. You know, we can desire, and Krishna himself is fulfilling those desires. Right? So if we have somebody here who's desiring to be with Krishna, and he's saying, Krishna, please be with me, protect me, give me your guidance. So Krishna satisfies his desires. And if someone else is like, Krishna, I don't want to be with you, I want to play God myself, and I want to be away from you, I don't want to be near you, I want to be to satisfy my senses or whatsoever. So then again, Krishna satisfies his desires. He gives them what they want accordingly. And as they surrender unto him, he responds accordingly. So really, Krishna is impartial in that sense, because he's giving the same access to everybody. But depending on what each individual desires, Krishna is giving it to her. So if someone went far away from Krishna, he can't really say, hey, Krishna chucked me far away from him because he's impartial. You know, it's all according to our desires. So he satisfies the desires of everybody in the same way. And if we want to be with Krishna under his guidance and his protection, then we can do that too. And Krishna will take care, he takes special care of his devotee. So that's how Krishna is. So Krishna is impartial in that way. And he loves everybody, all the living entities. And sometimes we might also think that even in terms of being devotees, we can also think, okay, this devotee is very advanced and he's close to Krishna, and that devotee is not so advanced, so he's not so close to Krishna. You know, but again, in that sense too, Krishna is impartial. Krishna is impartial. Because Krishna says in his endeavor there's no loss and there's no diminution. And he says even if one person, if a devotee, if he's sincerely trying, and even if he commits the most abominable thing, he still needs to be considered to be saintly. So Krishna is impartial in that way. You see? If he sees us trying, it's really hard. It's really hard because we've got all this previous conditioning. So sometimes there might be devotees who are really trying to be Krishna conscious, but they've got some bad habits that are with them. You see? So even myself, for example, I started to chant, but I was still smoking. I just couldn't leave it behind. You know, when I first started my spiritual life, you see, and that was my bad habit, my previous conditioning, but eventually, because I was trying sincerely, I mean, I tried for a long time, but I wasn't trying sincerely. I tried for like 15 or 20 years, but that wasn't sincere, you know. It was just like this 5-year-old boy, it's here, I'm going to do it later, you know, I'm going to do it later. But when I tried sincerely, within 1 month, within 2 months, Krishna gave me the ability to give up all my bad habits. Because I really tried sincerely. I thought like, yes, I'm going to try, I want to surrender to Krishna. And he helped me in this way. You know, so I could do that. So in the same way, we need to keep on trying. So it doesn't mean that Krishna is different to one person. Like he's not impartial. He considers everyone in the same way. And actually, if we're sincerely trying, then Krishna himself, he gets out of his way to help us, to help the devotees. So it says in this verse, in the Bhagavad. Where is it again? Yeah. When one desires Krishna, the Lord takes special care and encourages one to desire in such a way that one can attain him and be eternally happy. So Krishna is that merciful. All we need to do is desire sincerely. Sincerely desire and sincerely try to become Krishna conscious. And as we surrender, he will reciprocate accordingly.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama.